several decades for a number of reasons, but notwithstanding that they're trying to layer in for the inevitable discount that's going to be required for our version of social medicine, which is Medicare and Medicaid. And so the problem Mark Cuban is facing right now is being able to access direct purchasing from a lot of these drug manufacturers. And that may only be able to be solved with some sort of legislative action or policymaking action at the agency level in Washington, D.C. So that's why we sort of followed up now to set up a further meeting with Senator Klobuchar and her chief of staff to try to, the timing's actually really good right now for him to approach this and revisit it and try to push some of those levers that would allow a company like his or many others that might pop up like his to be able to continue to offer more and more drugs, because there's only a certain number, right, that are available right now through costplus.com. And he would be able to expand and turn himself into like the pharmacy, or again, others that pop up like it. He's not against competition in this space. He's all about more innovators or more companies, if they can access these drugs, just doing a 10 or 15% markup and the cost of delivery and fulfillment, which is a godsend for many people. And we talked about this in the pediatric space because of all of the medications my daughters had to be on over the years. And it is disabling and discouraging at best, and can tear a family apart at worst. So anyway, I just wanted to add to that because it really was an important thing among many important things that happened at this meeting in San Diego. But anyway, John, I'll check in with you. I sent you a back channel on another thing.
I'd love to check in with you. And the other thing I just want to add to that is Amazon is making a big play in the same space. And so the best way to prevent any sort of monopolistic behavior of a natural monopoly, which would be if Mark Cuban were the only one doing this, it's encouraging that one of the big tech powerhouses with many billions in the bank is going after the same problem, maybe not with the same mission as Mark, but the fact that there are two well-funded initiatives in this space augurs well for avoiding the predatory behavior that comes with monopolies over time. So I'm very encouraged by the fact that Mark is doing what he's doing, and that he's likely not to be the only one in the end game, which will keep these margins so that people can afford their drugs. Because he used the example of insulin, and that's just egregious. It's just so egregious that people have been unable to afford a life-saving drug that previously was far cheaper than it has become in the past few years.
Well, by the way, just quickly, this isn't just a US only issue, by the way. I don't know if it's happening elsewhere this side of the water, but UK NHS is having similar issues with certain medications becoming more and more privatized. It's a slow sliding degradation into privatization of the NHS. And more and more medication each year is going to privately sourced companies. So, it's not just a US thing. I don't know if it's happening anywhere else with our international audience.
Don't know. We will find out. So, should we jump into the big tech headlines for today? We've gone through the non-tech news for the time being.
Yes, let's do this.
Okay.
This machine is a tech news too, by the way.
True.
A good one.
Yeah, that's right. That's amazing. So, where is the file there? No, wrong file. Where's Airhorn? There it is.
Hold on.
Yeah?
Phil, I've been trying to bring you out, but I couldn't, so you have to jump out and jump in again. Philip.
Okay. I can try here. Where is he? Got Jeff there. Where's Phil? Oh.
We start first. I'll try to bring him up.
Okay. Okay, here we go. With the big tech headlines for today. What's today? Today is Wednesday, June 15th. So the top story that I have here is from sources that claim that crypto hedge fund called Three Arrows Capital faces an uncertain future after a $400 million liquidation. CEO named Zhu, like a Chinese name, ZHU, tweeted, "We are, quote, committed to working this out." And this is getting an incredible amount of coverage from The Guardian, TechCrunch, CoinDesk, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. Funny how the Wall Street Journal covers this, but not Facebook doing Amber Alerts or, Anyway, there we go. Some fund I'm not familiar with, Three Arrows Capital, facing uncertain future. The next is about Sweden/China's joint custody entrepreneur Carl Pei, who did the OnePlus phone, which was very, very popular in Asia, and then he stepped down to create a new company called Nothing, which is being backed by one of my very dearest friends, Ted Pearson, who I'll be with on Friday night. Anyway, I'll probably see Carl tomorrow, actually, at this event I'm going to. So Carl Pei now has this new company, Nothing, and they released earbuds and then all the geeks loved those, and now they scheduled an event to release their first phone called the Nothing Phone 1, which was scheduled to be released July 2nd, but a few hours ago they leaked a photo of it, and it's a transparent phone. So in part on the back, they just show the back of the phone, and it looks incredibly cool and super uber geeky and stylish and futuristic. And so it's got a bunch of people buzzing about that. And it says Carl says leaks are harder to contain nowadays, and that more details will be revealed over time. Indeed, they're going to reveal all the details on July 12th at this event. And it's a customized version of Android, which will probably be the best designed version of Android anyone has seen yet, because the team that Carl's working with, all of his first investors are all dear friends of mine, and I nearly invested myself, and they're Swedes. And for those who don't know, nearly all of the top design stuff going on in tech is being done by Swedes. They're just masterful designers of beautiful, elegant simplicity and kind of minimalism, and I'm sure it'll be gorgeously designed, and we'll have to wait and see what the reviews say. But if it's anything like the earbuds, it should impress, and then iPhone's going to have a bit of a rival on their hands, because you can do. I think I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that Carl and the teenage engineering team and the everyone behind this has the skills necessary to make something that is competitive to Apple at a far lower price, essentially. Same specs, maybe even better design at a lower price. So we'll see. We'll know in a month, July 12th. Yep. Next one. Everyone's super quiet today. Is my mic on? Yes.
Yes.
It
Okay.
is. I'm just enjoying your voice.
We can
Go
hear
for
you,
it.
Tyler.
Okay, good. I'm in a special little audio booth, so it should sound a little better.
Tyler, I was just going to ask you one question about the Nothing earbuds. Is there
Yeah.
something just revolutionary about that, or is it just
No.
sort of a
What
placeholder in the ecosystem that they want to build?
here's what I think is the unique value proposition: is that everyone knows and Huawei has proven more than anybody that you can make Android phones with the same hardware specs as an iPhone, meaning similar battery size, similar processor speed, similar camera specs, all this on a technical basis, all the specifications can be equal. And because you're not Apple and you don't put the Apple brand, which they really charge a premium for that, you can make a Xiaomi phone. If Xiaomi, makes a phone that on paper is better than the iPhone at half the price. Okay. There's a problem, though, that the Xiaomi phone has a version of Android that runs it, And the design of that version of Android is really generic and not beautiful. And the phone itself, from a hardware design perspective, is also rather generic and not in any way beautiful. So the proposition with Nothing is, well, we're some of the best designers from a hardware design standpoint, which would be Teenage Engineering, who are renowned for their hardware design globally, and software design, product design standpoint, where you can customize Android in a way that feels way better than any version of Android anyone's ever seen before, and maybe even better than Apple's beloved design sensibilities in the iPhone. I'm very confident they will be able to do that and surpass that. And so that doesn't cost a lot to do that. There's not a lot of cost involved in gorgeous design if it's done correctly. So especially on a per item basis, like even if it adds an extra dollar per device, because you sell 10 million devices, that's, you spent 10 million on design. That's a dollar per, phone or earbuds. And that's what they did, was they spent a bit on making a really impressively, very impressive design from a hardware perspective and from a user interface perspective for the earbuds and for this phone. That makes sense to me. That adds up. I think you're going to be able to design something that looks and feels and smells better than an iPhone for less, for a significant reduction in cost. So
The big difference here would be processor, right? Oh, sorry, Tyler, I didn't mean to cut you off.
well, you're right. Well, it's certainly on the laptop side. Apple's now in a unique position with the.
Well, the M1 and the M2 are kind of they have their roots in the Bionic chip, so I don't think it's going to be a huge leap for Apple to bring that design over to mobile. And I think once they do, I mean, Xiaomi's still stuck on Snapdragon from Qualcomm.
Correct. Everyone is.
It's a huge difference. Yeah,
everyone's
exactly.
stuck on Snapdragon, but the Snapdragon 8 or 888 or whatever they're calling the latest version is on paper benchmarking fine against iPhone 13. The question is, as you're saying, will Apple be able to bring the M chip system architecture benefits over to the mobile? And then if they do, then they're going to see a breakaway like they've seen in the laptops, where at this point, I think you would be crazy to buy something other than a MacBook Pro in a laptop, or a MacBook Air, MacBook, or whatever, because the M1 chips are just on a different level. It's kind of a next generation kind of a thing, and the non-Apple laptops got to figure something out in terms of chips, because Intel and the likes are not going to be able to keep up with where Apple's at right now on the laptops. Will the same happen in phones? We'll find out very soon, and that could totally happen. That's in the realm of possibility for sure. That ball's in play. So, yeah, it's by no means a finished race. We still have to. That's why we have to play the game to see how it all plays out. The next one is the Wall Street Journal. Or there's a sister article. In a sister article to the first article, an interview with Carl Pei on the Nothing phone, building confidence with suppliers, raising funds, and more. And he reveals that they shipped over 500,000 of their Ear One, the earbuds. So the second big topic today is from the Wall Street Journal. They say they have sources that crypto lender Celsius Networks is looking for financing options from investors and exploring other strategic alternatives like financing restructuring. That sounds like a project in trouble. There's a sister article from the Financial Times that says Celsius portrays itself as a simple company offering financial freedom, but risky trades and bets have led to a crisis, having its assets to $12 billion in May. Next big topic from Reuters. The EU's General Court sides with Qualcomm over the European Commission's billion-dollar fine from 2018 for allegedly paying Apple to use only Qualcomm chips. So U.S. chipmaker Qualcomm on Wednesday won its fight against a billion-dollar fine imposed by EU antitrust for allegedly paying Apple to exclusively use Qualcomm chips. The next is from The Guardian, who says they have sources that U.S. defense contractor named L3 Harris is in talks with Israel's NSO group to acquire its Cortec, aka Pegasus, the iPhone hacking app. The White House says such a deal would raise serious security concerns.
I love that
Yeah, I
response.
want Pegasus to die a slow death.
The next is that Cloudflare says it mitigated a 26 million requests per second denial of service attack, the largest attack detected to date, targeting a customer using its free plan. Internet infrastructure firm Cloudflare said today that it mitigated a 26 million requests per second distributed denial of service attack. And that's how they benchmark the strength of their defenses, is how many requests per second they can fend off, and they're up to 26 million per second. Because that's an old school tactic for shutting something down, is you just flood it with requests that it can't handle, and it cracks under the pressure. And Cloudflare is able to resist up to 26 million. That's quite commendable. So the next is from The Guardian, that Microsoft officially retires Internet Explorer after 27 years, disabling the desktop app and directing users to Microsoft Edge, their alternative to Internet Explorer, for lack of a
AKA
better.
Chrome.
Yeah. Chrome-based Internet Explorer. The next is from the New York Times, that the NHTSA, this must be about Tesla, that's the National Highway Safety. The NHTSA data from July 1st of last year to May 15th of this year shows 392 incidences involving driver assistance tech, including 6 deaths. Tesla accounted for 273 crashes. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration released data on 10 months of crashes involving systems like Tesla's autopilot, and they're going to try and figure out if they should be recalling these cars. It's this big data dive to figure out if Tesla's going to get a big recall, essentially. So to be determined, Tesla's stock price is going to move rather dramatically at the conclusion of the decision based on whatever the NHTSA decides to do based on all of this data diving they're doing. So
This
the
is
next,
incredibly difficult, right? Like,
yeah,
it's like trying to prove a negative, essentially, because it's hard to prove the accidents that didn't happen.
right,
Like, it's very easy to prove an accident that did happen and AI was either involved or it shut down just beforehand, which seems to be the crux of part of the argument, that it shut down seconds before and wasn't actually monitoring. But it's really hard to counter and say, look, well, there's these 100,000 crashes where we know for a fact it would have happened. If not, yeah. I don't know. Matt, your mic is unmiked, mate.
I'm
So
sorry about that, guy.
in a related article, Jonathan, who I guess is in the audience, and if he is, Cheryl, maybe let's bring
On
Jonathan
stage,
up.
I think.
Oh, great.
Hi
I
there.
think he's on stage.
Hey, welcome back, Jonathan. Thank you for the link.
Hi there,
Welcome
Cheryl.
back.
Hi there, Tyler.
Hey, please share that link. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, only the update from I think it was late yesterday. Elon Musk saying that unless Riven and Lucid can reduce their costs, they won't see the year out. And this obviously has to do with rising manufacturing costs in the US, both on the labor side and on the production side. And obviously, Tesla has a large manufacturing base in China, its principal base in China, where manufacturing costs are still under control.
Yeah, he's quoted as saying in this podcast, he was on a podcast on Tuesday, Tesla owners Silicon Valley, and he said during the podcast, quote, unless something changes significantly with Rivian and Lucid, which are 2 Tesla competitors, they will both go bankrupt, he said in the second part of the interview. An essential part of the problem, in Musk's view, is that the 2 are competing in an industry where, generally speaking, very little profit is made on a new car, with the bulk of earnings coming from the lucrative aftermarket business. much like the printer company with ink cartridges or a razor company selling replacement blades. An automaker generates a large chunk of its income from spare parts for a large fleet of existing cars on the road, something both Rivian and Lucid lack. What exactly the margins are is one of the industry's most closely guarded secrets.
He also took a swipe at the fact that they qualify because they manufacture under 200,000 cars a year, that they qualify for the subsidy, the US subsidy on EV vehicles, which is $7,500. So his point is sort of reinforced by the fact that, you know, A, they're not profitable, and B, if you took away that subsidy, they definitely wouldn't be profitable compared to Tesla that doesn't qualify for that subsidy, and he's claiming it's still profitable.
And then there's
Didn't
another.
he get subsidies himself? Like, didn't Tesla get a lot of subsidies before?
So they would have qualified as long as their volume was less than 200,000
Right,
units on an annual basis, but obviously they
right.
ship way
Yeah,
more
what
than
I
that.
mean is in their early days, they did benefit from it. So they did benefit from it, and that's how they grew. So other companies will be using the exact same thing until they are capable of doing that. I mean, it's just I'm trying to point out the hypocrisy, honestly.
Oh,
Even
no, look, I mean,
even the solar Sun City was the exact same thing in their early stages. They got a lot of subsidies even from the Obama administration. So I think it's a common thing that they benefited themselves as well.
yeah, this is a
Yeah,
very good
but there's
point,
a
but this is the
difference. There's
world
a
according
difference.
to Elon Musk, isn't it?
But there's
So
a difference.
go on.
Sorry, I apologize. The difference is look at the growth plans. Even when initial stages there were subsidies received, the growth is exponential. Look at the Gigafactory and the number it's manufacturing here in US and in China and other like Berlin. Do you see Rivian or Lucid with any of such plans? I don't see that, and that's a huge difference. Yes, you have the period receiving subsidies, but then what you do with during that time with your R&D and expansion plans, that makes all the difference. So that's why the survival of these companies in future looks bleak because the lack of these future expansion plans.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying to also say that, especially currently because of the global turmoil and supply chain disruptions, as well as the global economy being impacted, it may be different because if you remember, all of us, if we remember, Tesla, in fact, after even getting so much subsidy, they were in trouble that they were trying to sell it with Apple, if you remember, because that was part of the struggle they were having a lot. So companies do struggle. Yes, they have growth strategies, but then because of some outside circumstances, things get impacted. And things don't go according to plan. I'm not trying to justify that companies shouldn't die if they struggle, but I'm just trying to say that Tesla did actually go through what these companies are going through.
100% messy, yeah, absolutely. I'm personally not entirely sure how much we should read into this. I mean, he's doing what all CEOs sort of want to do when defending their company, and their stock price is sort of pointing to the competitors and trying to assert that they're not going to make it. It's interesting timing right after we've had news of a stock split. Obviously, the market's struggling. Tesla's not struggling, but down from where it was at its highs last year. There's also the emails going around of how he's essentially sort of warning all the gigafactories and all the workers that it's crunch time. So it kind of fits for me. It's just a little bit of narrative put out there to sort of boost confidence and maybe take some of those people on the fence away from the other investment options. I don't know about Lucid. I personally really hope Rivian doesn't sort of fold. I think Rivian, at least their large 4x4, doesn't really compete with Teslas. It's a completely different vehicle catering to different. Even the Cybertruck, like they just don't really seem to have a huge crossover in market. I'm not so sure about Lucid, but yeah,
And
I
this
don't know
is
how much we can
FUD.
read into this.
yeah, no,
This
I,
is
I I would agree with that. I mean, he's definitely putting the boot in, but he's doing it at a time where capital is evaporating. So he is
Exactly.
definitely putting the boot in and trying to change investor sentiment, so that they don't really want to throw good money after bad, because there's definitely going to be a gap between, I mean, as people have pointed out, they haven't got the scaled manufacturing yet, and the ramp up where they're going to need capital, additional capital and significant capital. And he's basically highlighting that, wow, this would be a very risky bet.
Well, but
Obviously,
I
I
think
personally hope that
they
people will
both
invest
just
in him.
raised
Oh,
capital, Jonathan. I think I remember reading that at least about Lucid, which is in Arizona, and I think Rivian also has a factory in Arizona. So I think maybe they are. I don't know. In times like this, it depends on how you manage your capital.
actually, the thing is, the times are so different now. The supply chain issue is out of control of any of these companies. So, what distinctively put Elon and Tesla apart? They established their manufacturing prior to these supply chain issues, and somehow they are ahead of the curve. So, right now, in this present situation with supply chain issues, with the market shrinking, with all the inflation going on, we are talking about the future. Yes, they raised some money. Yes, Lucid have a completely different product in terms of the luxury car that they are providing, Mercedes and upwards, Land Rovers kind of thing, and Tesla is not there. I understand that, but at the same time, for an investment purposes, you do have to look for the future where the company is headed towards. Yes, they raised some money, but how long is that money going to last? If that capital is enough for them to expand and scale up to the,
Yeah, you're quite
it's
right.
not.
So they raised 3 billion mid last year, and at their current burn rate, they're going to need another 7 billion cash injection to build out their manufacturing capability. So this is definitely. I mean, he's definitely muddying the waters here. He knows they're very sensitive. They need to secure this capital, and by the end of the year, there's going to be, as central banks tighten monetary policy, and put up interest rates, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to raise capital, especially if they haven't got a thriving customer base, which both these companies they don't have yet. And
And the
and the point about
prices.
Chinese manufacturing is, China at the moment hasn't seen the same increase in principal energy costs on the manufacturing side. In Germany, if you look at Europe, the German PPI came out, it was 33.5%. So that's the producer price index. It rose 33.5%. So manufacturers are now paying 33.5% more to manufacture products in Germany, which is, if you like, the manufacturing heartland of Europe. In China, that figure is still under 10%. In the US, it's trending above 12%, I believe, at the moment. So yeah, he's a smart guy. He's basically muddying the investment waters and appetite for any of these companies, obviously to his gain, he hopes.
And the prices are going up, so that's what he's indicating. I mean, unless they are able to slash the prices down, which I don't see how they will do that. And he's just stating a truth, I think.
EV manufacturers have put their prices up principally because the cost of the battery's gone up by anywhere between 15 and 20% over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I don't see that trend stopping.
But
Manufacturing
this
costs
Yep.
outside of the battery are rising.
this
Yep, the
must be
lithium and the mining cost and the labor cost and then supply chain cost and all the chips, and I mean there are so many factors. So I don't see they are able to reduce their pricing. It's going to go up. The price is going to go up at the same time. They are not scaled large enough right now to have any kind of, yeah, I don't see it happening.
And the big concern would be, consumer sentiment. So consumer discretionary spending is beginning to fall, and I think that'll drop off the end of a cliff by the end of the year. I think the US, they just released their retail figures, their advisory, didn't they? The bureau, I forget what it's called, but they released them today, and they're down. So consumer discretionary spending, and in fact, you know what? The biggest negative component in those retail figures were car sales. So consumers are now getting very, very sensitive to these high cost items. I mean, if you look at the economy at the moment and you're thinking of buying an electric vehicle, and what the average price in the US of an electric vehicle is about $50,000. It's about £42,000 here in the UK. That's a sizable amount of money. I mean, even if you take it on a lease or finance agreement, that's a lot of money at the moment as we move into sort of uncertain times.
I can't help but wonder if, as we're talking about sort of the potential that's muddying the waters, whether intentional or not. Like Tesla doesn't have an issue with orders, for instance. Like it doesn't have to worry about capitalizing on market attention. It's fully like booked out for manufacturing for many, many months, years. And I'm given to understand it doesn't really have to worry about like cash flow because it's cash positive and has been for a while now. And stock price wise, I mean, many people still claim, and even Elon himself, that it's overpriced. So I can't help but wonder that is the concern here, if there is a concern, of limiting the cash flow to the competitors' companies to limit the access to natural resources they have. We know we have a problem with nickel. We know we have an increasing problem with lithium. And even with existing nickel and lithium mining that we're doing in certain areas of the world, human rights activists and local sort of and world jurisdictions are starting to crack down on that. And they're actually taking a closer look as to how these minerals are mined and how they're refined and whatnot. You know, lithium in particular is just horrific for water supply and water usage. So I can't help but wonder that is that maybe where the worry is, the difficulty is that Tesla needs to make sure that it can secure these mines and these refinery areas and limit Lucid's and Rivian's access to them as much as possible.
Well,
But at the same
I
time,
suppose it could be, but they have a strong relationship with the Chinese government. I mean, 80% of the rare earth metals, 60% of the world's batteries are made in China, and the point you make is very pertinent. It's a very toxic process. It's highly polluting the process of manufacturing the battery and converting the raw materials into the component parts. So yeah, I'm not sure. It could be. I think this is just from a financial perspective. He wants to ensure that these companies find it as difficult as possible to raise cash, and it's already becoming very difficult. So I think that's probably the main driver here. But it's interesting that he came out and publicly said that. But I guess that's true to form, isn't it?
well, he's very mindful of the amount of lithium used in the battery, and if you see in the R&D and the way battery design is evolving, the amount of lithium is getting less and less with each improvement in design. And I forgot, my friend was mentioning now the percentage is so low compared to before, and I don't see that kind of improvement in battery design in other companies. The latest battery design is just astonishing in how much it reduces the use of lithium and increase the energy storage and reduce the expenditure of energy. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So the battery design itself is just amazing with Tesla. If you guys can go and look at it, I know a friend of mine who's just obsessed with battery designs, and they just keep on working on improving how to reduce these toxic metal usage and maybe shifts to a better design every time they try to come up with solutions, and other companies are far behind, in my opinion.
I'd like to add a competitive topic. So I live in Silicon Valley, and I see Rivians cropping up a lot more. We see them on streets just like we did in the early days of Tesla. And Lucid's a little bit less so. You do see them, but not as many quite yet, because I don't think they're quite shipping as much perhaps. But I think that Elon validated these competitors by even talking about them. And a lot of what he says about having momentum apply to GM and Ford and Daimler a lot better. So I think in that sense he could even be in the middle. So now you have to come up with a perspective that specifically favors electric vehicles in which he has a lead, but not in other vehicles in which he doesn't have a lead. And manufacturing really isn't quite it. So I don't know what's going on, but I think he's validated them, and I'd be surprised if these guys cannot raise money to keep going, because I just see them a lot more, and I think customers have a hunger for a different design. It's not just what's under the hood, the cars themselves. You want to have some variety, and there's no way one vendor is going to give you that.
Yeah, not a fair comparison to the rest of the country or the rest of the world, but I see the same thing. And the same proportion in Southern California, across the state. Not as many Lucids, definitely Rivian, and if the green approach continues, I would ask another question: is what about a takeover? The CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, has been very, very vocal. I don't know how those puzzle pieces would go together, but I would think if they're really, really hurting for cash, that somebody would want to buy them at a
Yeah,
depressed
I
price.
think he does mention that in this interview that he's given. He does talk about potentially there's an opportunity if they go into administration for one of the bigger car companies to acquire them. And I agree that he's singling them out because he sees them as effective competition. I mean, in regards to GM, I mean, the Bolt just had a disastrous recall last year, didn't it? And their sales, I mean, just, I think it was something like 100 cars or something in the quarter, unsurprisingly, because there's of the Bolt, because there's a recall. But even so, and they've drastically, GM is the only EV manufacturer that's reduced their price, and they still can't sell the cars. So I guess cynically he's sort of seeing the big guys like Ford and GM and others as not really being effective competitors, maybe from a technology standpoint. I think there's also a report out today by a driving body on the number of crashes between various different car manufacturers and their sort of automated, their autopilot type solutions. And I think that's sort of showing that Tesla has more crashes than others, but I can't dig into the details of that at the moment. It doesn't seem to show whether it's a like for like comparison, i.e., the average crash rate is higher with respect to the number of vehicles on the road, because obviously you'd expect Tesla to have far more crashes because there are just far more of them out on the road. But yeah, I mean, there could be a number of reasons here. But his main thesis about the cost of goods going up and look, if these guys can't, turn a profit or tread water now with subsidies, okay, there's some scale benefits, but if they keep their manufacturing in the US, they're always going to be a disadvantage in some extent to Tesla. Remember, Tesla manufactures some of its, has other partners manufacture the batteries. And I believe the drivetrain and other things are assembled in China and shipped out to the US. But I mean,
Yeah, but he has to make a case that what worked for him will not work for these guys, and he's not making that case.
well,
As
no,
Messi
hold on,
mentioned,
he is, and there's a clear case. There was lots of free money. For the last 10, 20 years, there's been a huge amount of free money because interest rates have been zero and the central bank has been sort of, printing money left, right, and center. That climate has changed. Central banks, you see the Fed doing it. The Fed's talking about potentially even a 1% rate hike. It'll probably come in tomorrow at 0.75%. The environment of free money or very, very cheap money is over. And I think that's the reason why he said that. He's trying to muddy the investment waters for these companies because they're obviously at the moment, if they have a shortfall and they need billions to scale, he wants to do it now before they raise the money. Then obviously after they've raised the money, anything he says is subjective.
I think that's true, but it's also not quite relevant. I will be, as I said, I'll be highly surprised if these guys cannot raise whatever money they need. There's no way Rivian can't raise money because they have very clear momentum with a highly differentiated product, and you see them, customers are buying them. I think that sure, maybe the arrangements are different, but I think that's not relevant. I think he's connecting them in a way that feel plausible but not really. Now again, I think even Lucid will not have a problem raising money. In terms of the accidents, I think it's also a question of how you market it. Tesla actively markets what they call autopilot and what they call full self-driving, neither of which is really true, let's say. So I think in that sense, to see more accidents for them may just be a function of how actively they're trying to get people to use it. And they have to do that because that's how they're training their models.
I agree with the distinctive design of Rivian. When I went for the Gigafactory opening to Austin, the guy who bought the first 100 Rivian was there with his truck, and we did the detailed analysis. So yes, the way they are using those battery cells and that extra battery cell they converted into a torch. That torch is like hidden inside a door pocket. That removable speaker, that key fob, which looks like like a locker, like a lock, and it's so sturdy. That cavity inside the truck where you can fit a
The
body
built-in
or a
kitchen.
kitchen or a
Yeah,
kitchen.
it's crazy.
And that was crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. I mean, although I'm a Tesla fan and I've ordered my Cybertruck a long time ago, and it's still is a huge line. It's not going to come until next year. I was very impressed with Rivian's design and the attention they paid to the details. So I'm sure there will be a market for, those trucks. I don't see any other truck comparing to Rivian at this point. It's just amazing. I have to admit that. But at the same time, how many of the people are gonna go for that kind of a specific, style and design? That's up for, I don't know what will happen. Tesla have a unique advantage in terms of their charging stations and many other reasons why Tesla is a different kind of company. But I do have to admit, Lucid's, the cars, that also was very superior in terms of their comfort and luxurious feel, which Tesla kind of lacks. So both of these companies have unique product, which have its place. But are they going to scale up to Tesla's level? I don't know about that.
Yeah, just to give you some numbers. So Lucid and Rivian over quarter on quarter are producing about 1,000 cars. So, Tesla is 500,000.
Yeah, that's not profitable at all, not in any stretch of the imagination.
That's
Okay,
my point.
let's get back to the list here. The next
Yes.
one is that YouTube launches a corrections feature letting creators add info cards at relevant timestamps. Instead of having to re-upload a whole new video, everyone makes mistakes, but if you mess up a fact or a flub a line in a YouTube video, it can be hard to correct the error. And now there's a new corrections feature, letting creators add info cards at relevant timestamps. So I guess you can add an overlay saying, I realize this is an error, and etc. So,
That's a time saver. I like that idea for content creators. It's such a time saver to be able to do that in the moment rather than having to upload everything all over again, losing count.
yeah, reading some of the tweets, it says replacing the video means losing the stats and starting over, and that's why this is a kind of a brilliant addition so that the video can keep its views and likes and all of that and the comments and whatever. You don't have to remove all that with a new video. So the next is from the Wall Street Journal. Google says 1.5 billion people watch YouTube Shorts every month. That's YouTube's version of TikTok, the vertical little short form videos called YouTube Shorts. And TikTok said it has 1 billion monthly active users in September 2021, growing to an estimated 1.6 billion in March. And Google says we've got 1.5, ha ha ha. So they're TikTok, YouTube. We have more short watchers than you do. And take that, Facebook, because TikTok's killing Facebook, and now YouTube's competing with TikTok.
But hold on, isn't YouTube new to this sort of short reels? If they've
Yeah,
gained momentum against TikTok that quickly,
yeah,
then they have the right to say, haha, they're a real
yeah,
competitor.
for
That
sure.
changes the game for TikTok in terms
Yeah,
of their revenue.
there's a really interesting, subtle interest, but very interesting situation with regard to landscape and portrait mode of video watching, creating and watching. And I mean, there's many differences between TikTok and YouTube, but fundamentally, the biggest difference is the orientation of the screen, where YouTube creators generally create in horizontal mode or what's called landscape mode, and where TikTok creators create in an iPhone or smartphone vertical portrait mode, and consequently the viewers of that content do the same. The viewers of TikTok watch it in a regular smartphone vertical portrait mode, and YouTubers, being that it's longer form as well, tend to watch on laptop screens or TV screens. And the question is, can there be some kind of dynamic optimization across that? And of course, the answer is yes, there can be. And the easy solution is that if you're on a smartphone, somehow you might crop the edges of the YouTube content to fit on the screen, or come up with some clever system, because a lot, this is the internal debate for content creators: is are you a vertical content creator or a horizontal content creator? And there's two kind of different audiences for that content, depending if you want your audience to be watching on a phone and mobile, and it's a tricky thing to deal with. But the one thing YouTube can do is say, hey, listen, if you want to make vertical content, please do so. And if somebody comes to YouTube and they're on a smartphone, we will prioritize the vertical content for them. So uh, and I believe they are doing that. They must be doing that, so that if you're on a smartphone and you go to YouTube, or you open the YouTube app on a smartphone, they know you're on a smartphone. They're more likely to show you vertical portrait mode content than horizontal content.
I'm not sure how that would work with their advertising, Tyler.
Right. No, well, that's the other point as well.
Yeah.
Every single advertiser, although the advertisers are a little more unique in this situation, because YouTube could tell the advertisers, listen, you need to make two versions of your ad. You need to make a vertical version and a horizontal version.
I was thinking more about the time. Sorry to
Right.
cut you off, but I was thinking more
No,
about
no.
it's really hard to put a 5-second ad in for a 15-second clip. And in fact, I don't really spend time on YouTube Shorts, but I can't ever remember seeing ads on there on any of the stuff. I think it's much more likely maybe that as you're doom scrolling, as it were, through that 15-second stack of 15-second clips, that an entire clip then becomes like
Correct.
a promoted ad. I
That's
don't know
right.
if they already do that.
Yeah, of course they do, but
I don't.
it forces the advertiser to make very enjoyable, ads that feel like native content.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would be much more interested in sort of the story between these two services if TikTok started heavily pushing long form content. That would be far more interesting to me, because I think less than the orientation is the length of the video. Because even though Facebook has other stuff, Facebook has text and posts and everything else and memes and that kind of thing that TikTok has, but it's all video content. It's more sort of slim, focused on the type of medium. But the reason why you go to Facebook, or that generation was to do the same thing. It was doom scrolling. It was, I want 20-second blasts of content that make me smile, giggle, or enraged, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. So there's a lot of overlap, at least in my mind, and obviously I'm of a certain age and internet usage. There's a lot of overlap between Facebook and what TikTok offer. It's that just like go full digital zombie and doom scroll just constantly, perpetually. YouTube obviously has the shorts, which is the whole doom scrolling section. I think on the app, actually, I think they've now moved it to the middle. It seems to be a very prominent button, but I'm only saying that from memory. But their long form content, I don't think there's a lot of crossover with TikTok. It's a you go there for a completely different reason. Like you go there for 5 minutes to 20 minutes, or maybe that's just me imposing my usage of YouTube onto the world. But there doesn't seem to be a massive overlap in that case, as they both stand at the moment.
Now, check this out. There's a whole extra dimension to add to the conversation, which is if 5 years from now, all the VR companies have their way and we're spending more time in VR, might we want to watch clever, viral, TikTok-like videos or long-form movies and or long-form YouTube videos? I watch 90-minute YouTube videos very regularly. And would you in VR, or AR for that matter, be more likely to watch vertical or horizontal content? I think the answer is obvious that you would much prefer horizontal. So if more of people's time is going to be spent in VR in the years to come, that's another factor to think about if you're building your content library of content as a content producer.
Yeah, I think YouTube would have the upper hand there.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't see somebody slipping on a VR headset to then doom scroll through TikTok. Like it just doesn't feel right to me. The point of TikTok is you press the button, it opens the app, and you are immediately entertained. You are no longer bored. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Next big topic. Bloomberg says as crypto markets tank, El Salvador has so far lost about $56 million after the president bought about 2,300 bitcoins, raising concerns about debt repayments. An epic rout that has wiped out about 2/3 of Bitcoin's value is exacerbating the debt crisis in the world's most crypto-friendly country. Yep, that's basic math for you right there.
Where is the debt coming from? I didn't think he took out a debt to buy him.
Okay, the headline implies that he did, yeah.
Well, if some of their citizens end up getting hurt, we'll see how long he'll be around.
Yeah,
Well, I think he used his sovereign fund to buy some. He didn't take out a loan. Mike Saylor took out a little bit of loan, so he's kind of got a little bit of something to deal with. And I think he's got positive cash flow from his business to help cover it. But El Salvador, I didn't think had a loan payment coming up, unless it's for other
I think they're
things.
going to default by next year. There's an article. Of course, they
But
have a debt on loan. I mean, they have debt, lots of debt.
right. But did they take out a loan to buy Bitcoin, or are they just talking about their loan situation in general, and they think part of their portfolio is down, so that's a problem? Is that what? I guess that's what they're saying. Yeah.
I guess it's in general, yeah. And also, IMF want them not to use Bitcoin
Right.
as the legal tender, and they still refuse to take it down, right? So they may not be able to get another loan from IMF.
But how's that different from if he'd bought Amazon stock and that's down?
The big difference, at least for me, because I look at the general population. If the general population, I know you guys are talking macro level, but at the micro level, if the general population followed his move, whether directly with him or not, and a lot of people took a hit, you'll see a government change, and it's not going to be an easy one.
He's a dictator, right?
No, he was elected.
Okay. Here we go. Next up is Estonia-based NFT infrastructure startup called NFT Port. Has raised $26 million, co-led by Atomico, which is my special guests at my event next week here in Stockholm, to help developers quickly launch NFT apps. Okay, the next is according to sources, Apple plans to refresh its entry-level iPad with a USB-C port instead of Lightning. Okay, that's great. And then next is from TechCrunch, a company called Fountain, which builds tools to help employers track applicants during the interview process, raises $100 million at $1 billion valuation. And the next is from Axios. It says the Washington Post has licensed It's ARC XP CMS to 2,000 companies. So the Washington Post has a new revenue stream. That's great. They need to diversify. Next is from TechCrunch AlphaSense, which offers search tools, raises money. That's great. And Metropolis, which uses AI and computer vision to help parking facilities automatically charge drivers, raises 167 million. Whole bunch of fundraising announcements as usual. Twitch expands its ad incentive program to more partners and offers bigger payouts. What else? Any other really good ones in here today?
Okay.
Redfin plans to lay off 8% of its workforce. And Compass is laying off 10% as housing demand softens amid rising interest rates. Well, it's got more to do, more than just that. And again, I'll remind you, please stop writing these articles about tech companies laying off 10 to 15% of their teams. This is getting really stupid. The next is a food delivery app called Wonder, raises 350 million. The maker of Words with Friends raises 46 million to build something called Wildcard, a Web3 game combining collectible cards with a battle arena real-time strategy. And then Mark Zuckerberg announced that WhatsApp users can securely transfer their chat history from Android to iOS while keeping end-to-end encryption on iOS to Android support. Well, that's nice. Okay, so those are the big boring headlines, and now we go into the tweets.
Can I
And I
share a little news for Clubhouse?
sure.
We now have the capability of adding GIFs or GIFs to our profile picture. If you hold the picture down and if you are updated, you will have this option and you can choose any GIFs and it will appear on your profile picture for 20 seconds. And also now you're able to, the rollout program of social clubs is gonna arrive soon, where you will be able to have your own social club, make your own personal hallway. And that's very exciting.
You mean the houses?
Sorry, can you explain the social
Yes,
clubs?
the houses, the houses.
Yeah. Clubhouse has a new thing called houses, and it's an invite only new, because Clubhouse used to be invite only, right? And it was for the entire app. The entire app was invite only, and now it's not. Now anyone can use the Clubhouse app. However, they want to bring back some of that invite only feeling, but now that it's already public. So what they have now are what are called houses. And because houses are intimate and welcoming, and like any decent house party, you decide who the core group is, and everyone else gets a +1. So you can invite all of your friends and make some new ones while you're at it. And so you can apply to be on the house's beta wait list, if that
So
makes
is this like
sense.
privatized clubs where every room that's made is privatized? Is that correct?
Yeah, you make a house, and it's kind of like a private club. It's like a club that's private that you have to be invited into, yes.
It's right
Like
now
It's
a
a
club you
club
can
within
search it.
Clubhouse. Right. It's a
like
club within Clubhouse.
you make a house and only people who you invite are able to come to that house. And when you open a room, only people who are in that house are able to see those rooms, and you can open, or your friends can open multiple rooms, so you will have a private hallway within that house, so you can see all the rooms opened up, which will be in addition to your existing hallway where all the rest of the rooms are seen. So it's like having your own personal house with personal parties where people are all known to you and you know them. And your hallway, this private house hallway, is really customized so you can be hopping in between these different rooms. It's like pretty exciting.
You know what you can do when you have an environment that's gatekept? You can charge for entry.
Yeah, the biggest difference is right now if you open a club, actually it's searchable to everybody. So these houses are only
visible to the ones you invited. So when you creating, when you, because now it's the beta and you have to apply for the houses. So if you are allowed to have that house, it's private. That means no one can search that house.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Bibi.
That's it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and if you want, you can make your house room public, and when you do that, your house name disappears and it becomes just like a regular hallway room. But if you want to keep it private inside your house, there are no like labels or at the room there is no topic. You just have to open a room like a social room, and then you can add the topic later on. And yes, there is this option of making it public that may make it visible to rest of the people.
That sounds a little bit like Patreon supercharged for audio. I would not be surprised if we see some sort of capabilities coming down the line for other media in your houses, being able to set upload images, for instance, or custom badges, for instance, to show that you're part of a house, maybe different levels of badges to support the house, etc. They give you a different sort of prestige badge of your avatar that the rest of Clubhouse can see when you're out and about. Yeah, there's a lot of payment options here. A lot of things they could do subscriptions for.
Okay, so now we go into the tweets. And the first tweet I have today, in no particular order, is from Saudamini that ultra-fast delivery firms face post-pandemic hangovers, which makes sense because people are not binge ordering like they were during lockdown. So the next is that retailers say they use facial recognition for loss prevention. Yes, exactly. Once the purview of law enforcement and intelligence agencies, facial recognition is now being used to identify consumers in Australian stores. And they use a photo from Kmart, and at the entranceway to Kmart, there's a very small sign, and the sign says, "It is a condition of entry that any bag, parcel, carton, or container be presented for checking if requested by a team member. This may occur at the fitting rooms or at the store exit points. When leaving the store, proof of purchase will need to be shown. This store has 24-hour CCTV coverage, which includes facial recognition technology." It very cleverly leaves the punchline to the very last sentence of that sign, which no one will ever read beyond the title of it, if at all. And so there you have it. And if I was a store, I don't see why I wouldn't do the same, actually. And more importantly, I don't see why, if I was Kmart and I had the chance to use a facial recognition system, let's just pick one at random and say, what's our friend Charles's company called there? SenseTime. No, SenseTime is the Chinese one.
Clearview.
Clearview. Thank you. So, if you're Clearview, and you say to Kmart, "Hey Kmart, would you like to use our facial recognition system?" Everyone who walks in the front door, you will know their name instantly as they walk in the front door. More importantly, you can keep your own database of anything you want. In your case, it might be the shopping history, and attach it to that customer ID, which is their name and their face. And that's your database. You own that database. And you attach your data, which is fundamentally the shopping history of that customer. It's your customer. You might even make note that they didn't buy anything on that visit and how many times they visited and how long they were on the store. That could all be done incredibly simply. Now, you could then also add other interesting data points in your private database. But now here's where it gets really crazy. What if other partners, clients of Clearview, like Hilton Hotels, also do the same? So everyone who goes into a Hilton hotel, Hilton attaches the guest database that they already have, by the way, across all of their properties worldwide, which is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. And that data set could now become a marketplace so that the Hilton could offer their database to Kmart, although there's probably not a large overlap in those two customer bases, but let's give a better example of like Hilton and Nordstrom's, or some retailer where Hilton customers are likely to shop. And what if Nordstrom also offers their database to Hilton? And what if you added in 20, 30, 50, 100, and in fact, easily thousands of different partners who are using Clearview could pay to access the databases of the other clients? And now at this point, Clearview could offer Clearview for free to anyone they wish to give it to for free, in exchange for taking a very small commission. I mean, like 1% of the access to each other's databases. It's purely a small, incredibly small API commission charge for hosting everything or whatever, and for connecting the pipes. And so, but more importantly, now everyone would have huge incentive to use this platform, because you're a retailer or a hotel. The person walks in the front door. You could have at your fingertips instantly all the data you could ever dream to ever want to have about that customer instantly, even though they might not even be your customer yet. So you would have all the airline data, all of the other retailers or other hotel data, or on and on and on, criminal history, yada, 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 yada. That to me is a seemingly somewhat inevitable. And to me, it's purely a matter of legal, regulatory stuff. But I don't see how they'll be able to stop it if people are notified of the current regulation. It's just like the end user license agreement, just as this Kmart sign says. I just tweeted it out so you can see the sign at Kmart that I'm sure their lawyers approved, that say condition of entry. By entering this premises, you agree that you're aware that we're using facial recognition and that your third party data will be sold. It's the same old game. So what would you have to do? I imagine the regulators are going to say that it must be more obvious. Okay, fine. So when you go to check out at the register, when you sign your name for the credit card payment, we will include as part of the terms that you sign for that you allow us to sell our data that we collected to other third parties.
Tyler, what if Kmart customers decide they don't want to be recognized and they shop on Amazon instead? How much of their privacy is protected then?
I don't know. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but
Amazon also has your shopping history and everything that you do on the
It's a great point.
website
It's
and
a great
so
point
many
because
things.
what's happening with cookies online is not so different from what I'm describing.
how about even all the things like I was flying the last few days and I was so shocked how many places have facial recognition now. Dubai airport, that there was nobody. I was just passing through the smart gate, and you just put your face in the camera and your passport, and they just went through. No questions, no nothing. And I'm pretty sure they have all the data behind it, and I'm sure they have been collecting that. Even in London airport, I just got here this morning. There was no immigration officer, nothing, just a camera and my passport. They scan it, and then they ask you to look at it, and I'm pretty sure that's also facial recognition, and they have a ton of data behind that, and I'm pretty
Of
sure they're all
course.
sharing all that. And
Right.
I don't remember signing up for anything like that. So I mean,
Messi,
I'm
US
pretty
have that too.
yeah.
US have that for decade too. For a decade. I mean, I always use the
And
self check-in too. So
yeah, and my own conscience recognizes that it's probably a necessary thing because walking through immigration or walking through an airport, they want to track where I'm going with the airport and so on and so forth. But I do that on the understanding between myself and the building authority that they are doing it for security purposes, not to be sold on to other places. But of course, I've got no control of that. However, within something like the EU, with that new GDPR, but also other extensions of that are happening with the EU, I'm hoping that a responsible authority like that will challenge governments if they misuse their photo recognition capabilities and sell on to commercial entities. How can a government authority do that? And somebody somewhere must be checking up on this, holding them to account, I mean.
Yeah, in fact, I was even wondering, how they sometimes ask you at the immigration saying, do you have alcohol and tobaccos, or do you have firearms and this and that? And then they try to catch you lying or something like nothing like that. But you can see some people, it says that you have to go to a kiosk and the passport wouldn't, the gate wouldn't let them, and then they have to go to a person, and there is at the very end of it, and then they go in special screen or something like. I am pretty sure there is some data behind it when they are processing it, and I don't know what that is, but yeah, they pick some people saying that error, it didn't go through, go get assistant or things like that. And I was just thinking the exact same thing everyone is talking about today. Right now, there has got to be a lot of data behind it. Otherwise, how can they possibly simply screen people very easily just like that? So I'm pretty sure they are
100%.
mining their data.
Messi, just 100% assume that your data is shared by, yeah, by the government.
I can hear Nick yelling, self-sovereign identity.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cheryl. And I think more and more they're obliged to, whether it's through Interpol or whatever it is. Governments probably do share that. And at some level, I can understand that. And yet, at other levels, I think it depends on how that other government is using the information. It's very scary thinking that inappropriate authorities will get hold of my identity and my travel practices, my travel itineraries and stuff. And it is very worrying. But how do we hold authorities into account, short of Nicholas's sovereign identity, etc.? Because we're not going to get there for a while yet. Um, do other people in the room on the stage here have any other indication that other than the EU there is any claim to even trying to deal with this situation?
Yeah, along the lines of what Ben Tristan mentioned yesterday about establishing a reading list, I would add Shoshana Zuboff's surveillance capitalism to that list because it takes on these issues as a central thesis of that book. And in terms of how to manage it, I think that there's a whole lot of governance issues. The internet is global. Uh, Regulations are nation state based, and deployments are multinational corporate based. And so it's my hope personally that some of the kind of activity that Tyler has called out under Modi in India around self sovereign cloud, self sovereign platforms, self sovereign applications may actually be a pathway to a more enlightened governance that incorporates the interests of citizens, the interests of nation states, and the interests of multinationals. I don't think any one of those three is going to be able to solve this problem of surveillance capitalism, let alone surveillance in autocratic states. But I think the the tensions between nation states, multinationals, and consumer activist agencies will hopefully be able to broker some middle ground in this space. I just think the economics so strongly favor the unfettered surveillance in surveillance capitalism that it's going to take time and a lot of um, serious dialogue between those three entities to achieve anything resembling a balanced solution set.
Okay. So I
As
just,
if we didn't have enough to be worried about yet. That's another
yeah.
thing.
Well, as soon as people get paid, as soon as these facial recognition systems become monetization engines for companies, where they don't pay for the facial recognition, they can monetize their own data through the facial recognition. Um, who wouldn't take it? It's now it enables you to monetize your most valuable asset to other partners in a really interesting way. Anyway, it becomes an incredibly powerful kind of information network, is what it is. It's not an ad network, but it could then become the world. This, oh my god! I'm just realized this as I said this. Oh my god! Because uh, Clearview, in doing that, could position themselves where the retailers and hotelers and everybody else uh, create an information exchange that is incredibly valuable to all of them because they sell their information data sets to each other on an opt-in basis, of course. So Hilton would receive a request that some retailer would like to pay for the access to the Hilton data, and Hilton would decide if they're going to allow them to purchase a license or not, right? And they wouldn't give it to a competitor like Marriott Hotels, for example, but they would give it to Nordstrom, so whatever. So, but where this gets really interesting is, of course, Clearview could include as part of the terms that Clearview is able to have a license to all of the data sets. And in doing so, could make the mother of all ad networks, because now Clearview could, in aggregate, know more about Cheryl and BB and Messi and Katerina and Dr. Fran and Pauline and Irvin than even Google, or almost as much as Google does, if they start to aggregate all of these data sets of all of these partners. So they would know a whole lot of your purchase history and a whole lot of where you've been and who you are and what you do and all of that in real time. So then they could sell that to advertisers. So an advertiser like Coca-Cola would say, well, we want to, our billboards, we only want our billboards to be seen by people who fit this demographic. And so when you walk past the billboard, there's a camera on it, and if it likes your face, you're part of the demographic they're paying for, and then you see the ads. And so you could start to create a dynamic real-time ad network based on the viewer, so to speak, and their data. Anywho, and that's
Hasn't
applicable.
that been
That's
hasn't
more
that been used in a movie yet? In that somebody in a movie walked past some screen or other and then
yeah,
it showed up.
but
Yeah.
it would be more applicable to the metaverse and to your online advertising because that's more personalized to you anyways. But then it would position Interview, for example, as an interesting ad network to given that data set. Anyway, you're right, though. I have seen that example of a billboard changing. I think that was the Schwarzenegger movie, something Man, Demolition Man, or something like that.
They did it in Minority Report as well.
Minority Report. Okay.
Narrative report.
So the next article or tweet that I have is that it asks the question: does TikTok pose data espionage concerns for the United States? And the answer is complicated. It says, while Chinese-owned social media platform TikTok has had a meteoric rise in popularity since it was released in 2016, the app's growth has posed privacy concerns, yada, 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 that we've discussed at length before, so we don't really need to do that again. And the answer is yes, absolutely. The next is from Saudamini from the UK. The future of the UK defence AI has been launched. Plans for the future of cutting-edge UK AI defence technology has been unveiled in a new strategic publication today. And the next is from CNN. Elon Musk is set to take questions from Twitter employees at a live town hall meeting for the first time, probably Friday when they do their town hall meetings. Elon Musk is set to answer questions, a flood of questions directly from Twitter employees later this week. Yep, sounds like Friday. For the first time since he agreed to buy the company. And the next is that Bill Gates says crypto and NFTs are a sham. Simple as that. Says they're worthless. The next is from BBC News. A phone tower or a phone mast can now run off wind and solar energy. A UK first sees a phone mast which can run off wind and solar energy, so can go up in remote locations, and more importantly, can stay going during power outages. Is even better example, because you want, when the power goes out, you want to make sure your phone doesn't go out as well. The next is from the BBC that Netflix plans a real-life Squid Game reality TV show with a $4.56 million prize. It will see 456 contestants compete in a series of challenges inspired by the dystopian drama Squid Game. And the next is that Facebook rolls out parental controls for VR headsets. It will let teens over the age of 13 submit a ask to buy request, which triggers a notification to their parents to approve the purchase. Very clever. And the next is artificial materials can be made invisible with a new process. Advancements in the field can improve sensors, telecommunications, encryption, and a variety of other technologies. That's lovely. And the next is from Jeff G. Wall Street Journal says YouTube claims it is gaining on TikTok in the short video race. We already covered that one. Thank you, Jeff. And Wall Street Journal says a high percentage of consumers really don't understand percentages. A study finds that people are particularly confused when companies use percentages rather than 100 to convey information. Like, what? Yeah. It's like if they say 50 out of 100 instead of 50%. Yeah. The problem is more than half of people are below average intelligence, I think is the crux of the problem. And then the next is from the Washington Post that zero COVID has many in China dreaming of leaving. Yeah, no shit. A growing number of Chinese professionals are subscribing to a new school of thought known as Runzhu. Bibi, is that the word? How to run away from their home country.
Oh, in Chinese we say 润. The meaning in Chinese it means rich, but because in Chinese the Hanyu pinyin the intonation is RUN, and it just coincidentally is wrong. So it's like pounds both in English and Chinese. So they say try to run to other countries. That means run to other countries.
Is it like run shu, which is like
Yeah,
delivery or shipping?
run.
One.
Run in Chinese because they use the romantic alphabet, so it also written as RUN, so that means run away in English, but in Chinese it's run, it pronounced as run. So you use the same pronunciation in Chinese, it's written as the run, which in Chinese means rich, rich in everything. So
Okay, the next is from Evan from the Washington Times that Americans are being warned of China possibly spying through smart coffee makers.
What?
What?
The worst
Is
part
our
of waking up,
coffee not sacred?
well, if there's a microphone or camera,
They want to see us in our
Not the
pajamas
onion.
making coffee early morning?
The
American
best part
American
of waking up is China
Is
in your
China in
cup.
your cup?
Are
says
tea drinkers safe? What if I
American
don't have coffee?
American researcher Christopher Balding said he uncovered evidence that China is devouring data collected through smart coffee machines made in China. Mr. Balding's report said problems with the internet-connected coffee machines are part of a broader data collection effort aimed at Internet of Things devices with low security and unclear data policies. Oh, I know what they're doing. Because it connects to your home network, it has itself, this device has terrible security, and so it can be used to penetrate your home network, essentially.
A lot of companies
IoT.
don't even need to penetrate the network as such. Like, for instance, if you're using a set of something like Hue lights, Nanoleaf, that kind of thing, quite often these devices want to integrate into your home. So the Home app on Apple is basically dog shit. It's awful. I'm really glad that they showed an update at the WWDC. But things like the app for Nanoleaf, the app for Hue, and a lot of these, I can't remember the other major Chinese one that's popular on Amazon at the moment. They have their own apps that have their own management software for your home, and you just click, it pops up, and it says, "Would you like to integrate with HomeKit?" And you click yes, and that has access to pretty much all of the data that the Home app has access to, including things like what devices are on. And what, if you have HomePods, for instance, it tries to extrapolate which HomePod you're close to. So it knows basically from that, if you take that little bit of data and you can tell the signal strength of your device depending on what access points, you can really easily triangulate who in the house is in the house, what rooms they're in, sort of what floor they're in, what lights are on, when you're doing what, your time schedule. And that's not hacking. You just, like we're saying earlier, Tyler, you just pop up and you say, "Hey, would you like to integrate?" And people click yes.
Right.
You know, this
Okay.
triggered a huge thought for me the other day because I bought a new vape and then they're like, oh, there's a new feature. It's smart. You can connect it to an app now. And I remember thinking to myself in the beginning, oh, that's kind of cool. And I thought about it a little more. I'm like, wait a minute. This could just be a way for them to better track me because people carry their vapes everywhere. I'm like, and then really begs the question of how much smart devices do you really need and how far should it go, right? Now we're thinking smart everything is great until we realize that, it's just more ways to be tracked everywhere we go.
Well,
Most
And
also,
then
I could
also
track, if you
what
have a smart
dovetails.
vape, I could track you and tie it to your healthcare.
Yeah, and what dovetails into that is if you're looking at China taking a look at that, they can map out your customer behavior and then tie it to their social conditioning. So that then begins to give them leverage in terms of how they, distribute propaganda and such. So it becomes a tool, really, if you look at it, and that's dangerous.
So make coffee the old way, the electric water heating kettle, and I mean that's
At least with a coffee maker, you can kind of understand that there might be a little bit of utility there if it's internet connected. I mean, my washing machine, for some reason, is smart connected. I can't think of a single other device in my house, apart from maybe the Hoover, that I am less interested in sending me smart notifications.
So it wouldn't be a discussion on this without either me or Mabwana speaking up. So as Mabwana isn't, I will. I encourage you in this field again to look at Home Assistant. It's more and more becoming something that non-geeks, well, we're all geeks here, so I'm sharing it amongst kindred spirits. But home-assistant.io, if you want all of your devices from all manufacturers to work, you don't want to install their apps, and you want to have complete control and knowledge over your data, then check out Home Assistant. It's slightly geeky, but definitely worth it.
Yeah,
Home
I'd like to
Assistant.
add to that as well. Sorry, I'd like to add on top of that. Yeah, so Ben is right. When I did my smart home, I actually focused on buying devices where you can disable the phone home feature and run them on your local network. So if you have a good router and you have a lot of, good LAN in your home, which is I think important for any smart home, you can then disable all that and have it all run through Home Assistant. And they never, static IPs, they never phone home. You only run the updates yourself if you have to want to. But they're just cameras for most of my stuff is cameras and sensors, so there's very little updates. Yeah, you can just block all that and have it all run locally on premise and never have to phone home. Don't
That
buy
would be
don't
great
buy
because
cameras
mine are
or
now
devices that require that. You have the choice as a consumer to buy devices that don't have that feature. There's a tons of cameras and sensors out there. You don't have to buy the Xiaomi one, or if you don't like it, you don't have to buy the Chinese camera, 8K vision if you don't want to. You can buy the ones that allow you to disable that.
But the Ring
Just
doorbell
curious.
and the rest of them won't let you do that, right?
a
No,
small
kind
I have to get
suggestion.
rid of what I already have.
not
A small
necessarily, but
suggestion. There's like a voice isolation option on your phone that will help with the background noise.
Just a question, curious, Tyler, what does this kettle have? I'm pretty sure, like for making tea. I mean, if you or coffee, if does it have a camera on it? I'm just curious how they do that. If there is any smart thing on it,
It
does it
doesn't
have?
matter. it wouldn't matter. It's used as a Trojan. I hesitate to use the metaphor of a Trojan horse because that's something totally different in cybersecurity terms. But it works as a way to get as a device that, as long as it connects to your network, it then compromises your network. It doesn't matter if it has a camera or not.
Okay, so like we're talking about the kettle that you plug it in,
Yeah,
or whatever that might be, right?
it
So
almost certainly doesn't have a camera or even a microphone. What it will have is
right.
just an Ethernet port, J45 port, so that you can turn it on and off remotely and program it to turn on and off remotely and shit like that. And you think, oh, okay, yeah, I want that. Little do you know, you've just connected a Chinese spy device to your home network, which
And
compromises
I,
your
I,
other.
I see the appeal, like you can use Alexa to Alexa, turn on my coffee or
Right,
whatever. At the
right,
same
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
going through the signals in your house and transmitting the data.
right.
So as Mubwana was saying, with a lot of background noise, you can choose any manufacturer. I have like 15 manufacturers of smart home devices. I have one app, so I don't have 15 apps installed. I have automations that talk between them. So my Unify camera spots a person, AI spots a person in the outside, not movement, but a person, and turns on some lights that can to control by a Shelly relay or a Hue light or whatever. So cross manufacturer automations guaranteed that they can't phone home if set up properly. Then you buy what you like based on its functionality and price, and you can be sure you're not being spied on, but it just takes a little bit of homework.
Can I add to what you've just said there, Ben? 100% that have your own network for certain, and it can actually be quite rewarding as well. If you have got one of these systems like Ring or SafeWise, that kind of thing, a lot of them now are supporting end-to-end encryption. So if you're writing off the concept of managing your own system and you've already invested in these cameras and you just said, you know what, I'm going to stick with them, I'm going to stick with this system. I like being able to access them remotely. I don't want to have to go through all the hassle of sort of like forwarding video and that sort of thing. Please look up your manufacturer and check if they support end-to-end encryption, because it's a little bit safer. It makes it a little bit harder for your video content to be accessed, for your cameras to be accessed. On some of them, you do lose a little bit of features. There are some special features on Ring, for instance, that you'll lose access to if you switch this on. But yeah, if you're not going to go all the way to what Ben and Mabwana had said, this is an absolute minimum. You must do this if it has the availability.
And I was
And
just also wondering that even sometimes when you have the absolute minimum, they still have the capability of getting some of the things. That's where I was trying to get at. If there is any kind of default capability that actually enables it to gather any data or anything just by the simple fact you are plugging it in and powering it in or something like that. I was just curious if
well,
it would have that type of capability.
the app, you trusting the developer. If Ring say it's end-to-end encrypted, well, one of the ends is their app, so they control that end, so you're still trusting them. And I doubt the code's open source, so it's awesome to do that. And to check those things and have those facilities. The other thing to note when you go for Ring or Nest, still got 15 Nest cams, but I've reduced nearly all of them. Is just remember local storage is cool. Is one decent IP camera like a Unify or a Hikvision, but probably don't go with Hikvision unless you know what you're doing. Transmits as much video data as 15 of my Nest cams. So the image quality on Ring and Nest is shite. And you don't realize it's shite until you have a break in and you try and show the footage to the police. And they're like, I can't see a number plate, I can't see a face, I can't see anything. So remember, because you're trying to squeeze all this video real time out of your broadband upstream, the video quality is rubbish. So consider setting up local storage, old school style, but still having all the remote access you need. And you can have 10, 20 times the data rate. So therefore, effectively 10, 20 times the image quality. Subjectively, it doesn't look like that. You put them side by side, they look similar. When you try and ID someone or find a car number plate, whatever, then you discover which system works. So just a thought. And you control your own data.
Okay. Am my mic on? Yeah, I think it is. Yep. Okay. So the next tweet I have is from Evan. It says major water cutbacks are looming as shrinking Colorado River nears a moment of reckoning. Those are, for the non-native English speakers, those are very strong words. As the Colorado River water shortage worsens, major cutbacks are needed to reduce most perilous risks A federal official tells senators. And that's the source of the water for all of Southwest America.
Arizona for sure. And we have already heard about the cutbacks. And our governor went to Israel last week or the week before to discuss how to put up a desalinization plant off the shore of Mexico so that Arizona could continue to grow and still have enough water because we have a water management program here called called demonstrating 100-year water assured water supply before you can get a building permit and that was passed in 1980, and it's pretty outdated now, obviously. Arizona is about twice the size it was then.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm
if I could
watching
just
it.
add, if I could just add that while it's well proven that from tree rings that the current drought in the Southwest is the worst in 1,200 years, not 12 years, not 120 years, but 1,200 years. And while reservoirs are at record low levels before the summer really gets underway, the level of water restrictions that are being politically implemented is pathetic. And the reason for that, I'm afraid, is that we're in such a polarized political situation that
It
no
is.
politician.
It's citizen unrest, John. Nothing is
Y-
going to be said about water in Arizona until
Yep,
after the election.
and even after the election, no politician wants to own any bad news, no matter how responsible it is. And so we have a situation, it's a game of chicken, and the end result of the game is not good for anybody. But this polarized situation we're in, the consequences for addressing these issues of climate change are only amplified.
Oh, to that point, I found a related article that I shared with our own little private gathering, which, let me find it right now. It's totally relevant. I forget which country it was. There's a country switching to 4-day work week so that the citizens can grow their own food, can spend 1 day a week growing their own food.
Sri Lanka.
With what water?
Yeah, yeah, it's a country with water, apparently. Yeah, um,
What's Sweden?
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka.
it was Sri Lanka. Okay, the Sri Lanka is switching to a 4-day work week so that Sri Lankans can spend 1 day per week growing their food.
This
And
is
that,
just after the crisis the economy has gone through. Like the country was struggling for so many months now. The economic crisis of resources and the shortages, they were heavily relying on imports and especially a lot of types with China. So I guess they have to now make their own.
yeah. Okay, next up is Evan found an interesting one about Ethereum mining is no longer profitable for many miners as energy prices go up and Ethereum prices go down. So there, there is a magical point where you lose money mining Ethereum if the price of energy gets too high. And the price of energy is getting very high. Ever increasing energy prices, along with a dramatic decline in the price of Ethereum, has made some Ethereum mining unprofitable for many miners in certain areas with high energy costs. There you go. Next
I
is
just want to add that, Tyler, that point for Bitcoin is still too far out from what
right,
we understand. Bitcoin is still highly profitable.
right.
Are they going to switch to solar panels?
They
Yeah,
already
yeah.
try, yeah.
That is one of the bizarre blessings of silver linings of expensive gas and whatnot and oil is that it makes solar more attractive economically. The next is from Evan about from Reuters. Reuters headline says China bank protest. This is wild. stopped by health codes turning red. What it means, it says a protest planned by hundreds of bank depositors, meaning customers of a bank in central China, are seeking access to their frozen funds. So, and I told you the economy was going to get really shaky in China during the combination, the confluence of COVID and the real estate bubble popping simultaneously. So that's happening. They're trying to do a run on the banks. However, the protest that was planned was um, killed because it was thwarted, is the word I'm looking for, because authorities were able to turn off the health codes inside the apps of every Chinese user. Chinese citizens have a health app. Inside the health app is a QR code that's either red or yellow or green. If it's green, you're allowed to buy things and move from place to place. Get on the train to move to an or a bus or whatever. Get in a taxi, what have you. You're free to move. If it's red, you are not. No one's going to allow you to enter the train or the bus or the taxi. So it was determined that who the protesters were planning this protest, and those protesters who previously had green codes, their codes were now red, so they were not able to move to go protest at the bank to do the run on the bank. So China bank protest was thwarted by health codes turning red is the headline.
If that's not the peak of surveillance capitalism per John's book's recommendation earlier, I'm not sure what is.
It's amazing. I had never considered, I mean, I did consider, that China would control their people in this kind of a way, but what an interesting example. Stopping
So
people.
the next step from there is, just in case they decide to walk, you're going to have to wear a bracelet or a necklace that that can give you a little electric shock, maybe put you to sleep if you try and do something you shouldn't do, which unfortunately is it's a pretty
No,
sensitive topic if you think
they'll
back
do
a
the
way.
opposite. Yeah, they'll freeze your bank accounts if you start moving in directions you shouldn't be moving. Yeah.
They now have the social score as well, but they could attack that.
Yeah,
But Tyler,
but
I will supplement some details about this bank withdrawal thing. Actually, it's in Henan. It's under the same group, so it's more like a scam because those protesters actually lay deposit their money inside bank, but actually the bank is was selling them some fund instead of receiving their money. So in the first place, they think, I mean, the protesters, they think they deposited money into the bank, so their money was insured. But no, they were buying some product under some other finance companies. So, but that's just the details of the original stories. But what you said about the health code, actually, in the long process, we all know it's the CCP government trying to control their citizens in a extended way. But I think this example gives a more obvious result of how that code can be used under this kind of circumstances because it's not for health anymore. I'm done.
Okay, here we
and
go.
it's not capitalism either. It's surveillance, but it's not surveillance capitalism. I don't think anyway.
All right. Next up, and I've got about 15 to go here. David Crace shares this one from Vogue that Tag Heuer, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the watch company correctly.
Tag Howard.
Tag Heuer watches will display NFTs on the face of the watch. Displaying NFTs in real life is the new cool, according to Frederick Arnault, CEO of LVMH owned Tag Heuer, and his father obviously is Arnault, who's the owner of LVMH. And by the way, Frederick Arnault, is very dear friends with my dear friend Ian, who used to be the chief digital officer of all of LVMH, who now is the chief marketing officer for what's the hardware wallet, the cold storage hardware wallet, the most popular one.
Taser?
Ledger or
Ledger,
Trezor?
Treasure.
Treasure.
What's it called?
There's two of them,
Ledger,
Yeah,
Ledger
ledger.
and Treasure.
Ledger.
Ledger,
Treasure.
the
And
French one,
treasure.
Ledger. So Ian left LVMH as the chief digital officer to go be the CMO at Ledger, and Frederick is a dear friend of his who's the son of Mr. Arnault, who's the wealthiest man in France, or if not Europe, and well, I think number 3 in the world, actually. Anyway, but his son runs now the watch company. He used to, his son, or maybe it's a separate son, used to run the luggage company, Rimowa. Anyway, but the idea that they're going to use the watch company to show NFTs on the screens, interesting, kind of interesting. So
It
the next
sounds
is,
like that. Sorry.
go ahead.
The Swatch watches came up with this collection of all planetary watches, the Mars mission, the moon, and it was amazing. And at the back of the watch, you could see those planets in their color. It was amazing. I was thinking that they would tie NFT to those, beautiful looking designs, but they did not. It was nonetheless a very, very a successful launch event, and the watches kind of sold off really quickly. I was trying to get some of them but couldn't. But I see these watches companies moving in that direction, just like other luxury brands like bags and stuff walking in this NFT market.
It's
Does
a great use
anybody
case if you're going to an event where the ticket is an NFT,
Right.
have it right on your watch, and you kind of flash your watch and you get in. So more than
That's
just
where
art.
Apple can incorporate it right into their upcoming identity stack.
Yeah, or your designer bag is not just a bag, but also your entrance recognition ticket to an exclusive event. You just, people can
Or from an
see.
exclusive event, Aaron.
Oh,
Evidence that you were
yes.
there.
Okay. Next up is Adobe revamps the metaverse design tools for Apple chips. So Adobe's getting into metaverse content creation, as they should. They're a little behind on that. The next is satellite images suggest that Iran is preparing for a space rocket launch. Well, let's hope to God it's a space rocket launch and not a nuclear missile. Iran appeared to be readying for a space launch, as satellite images showed a rocket on a rural desert launch pad, just as tensions remain high over Tehran. Yep, that's putting it mildly. The next is dinosaurs with belly buttons. See what they found in China. Scientists in China used a high-tech laser imaging technology on a rare and well-preserved dinosaur fossil to find a belly button.
Sentences I did not expect to hear today.
Yeah. And Instagram launches
Well,
new.
you know why this is important? Because that signifies that that baby was not
Live
hatched
young.
from an egg, but was in the mom's belly, connected with the umbilical cord. So that's why it's important.
Instagram launches new parental controls. Parents and guardians of users aged under 18 can now set a daily time limit, schedule break times, and see who follows their children and who they follow. And this is obviously related. TikTok just did the same. Instagram just did the same this week, just days later, because there's new regulations that's going to make the platforms responsible for teens who become addicted or suable. Parents will be able to sue them. And now, if there's these tools that they just released today, then they're going to have a hard time blaming the platform when there are tools that allow you as the parent to control your teenager from becoming addicted. So
I missed the TikTok news. How does that compare to
it's
the
just the same.
measures?
They
So
both,
it's exactly so you can control the amount of time you can force
correct,
breaks and that kind of thing. Wow, I'm
right,
surprised they actually brought that in.
right. But of course, they'll hide them so that the parents don't know they're there. But then in the courtroom, when it comes down to it, they're going to say, "Well, what do you mean? It's 2 clicks. We made it 2 clicks." And if you can't be bobothered to do 2 clicks to save your child from a life of addiction to shit content and rotting their fucking brains and becoming, future homeless people. If you can't wait, invest 10 seconds of your life to prevent your child from a life of prostitution, then that's not really our fault, now is it?
Well, Apple can already do most of this and probably better through the inbuilt family features, and most
Right,
family members don't use that anyway. So we've had the beta test. We know what parents won't do. They're not all of a
right,
sudden going to start
right,
doing it.
right.
Is this regional only, or is this worldwide that they're having to do these? Are they
So,
only doing it, for instance, in Europe to comply with
that's a great
EU
question.
laws,
I bet they're only
or is
doing
it?
it where it's required. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
US.
because
Yeah,
it's really easy to do with software.
right.
Like, if you want to do different hardware, that's a little bit different. But if you want to do it with software, it's a fucking flag.
So the next one is a big trending story in all of Twitter. Nobody sent this in. Twitter highlights this as one of the most shared stories in all of Twitter today. From the Telegraph in the UK, it says, fears for Taiwan as China lays the groundwork for its own special military operation in Taiwan. Xi Jinping signs directive allowing for non-war uses of the military, a tactic similar to that used by Russia before it invaded Ukraine. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a somewhat handsome older tech bro, might have been balding if memory serves me, who came in here months ago saying that get ready because the U.S. might start to provoke and poke the panda over the issue of Taiwan by softly implying and doing back channel communications to hint about recognition of Taiwan, which would then poke the panda into doing what Putin did in Ukraine. Did that happen or
Are
did I
they?
imagine
Are
that?
they?
Oh, you
No,
mean
you
the
were on
guy
it. Are they
who
poking the
go to
panda or are
the
they
future
poking
and come
Winnie the
back
Pooh?
from the future and bring the news from future? The
Are
And
you
I
guy
asked
who
talking
that
was
about
because, by the
are you
way,
talking about Pope Francis?
because Pope Francis also today says that Ukraine war was perhaps somehow provoked, which is very similar to another elderly tech bro who came in this room a few months ago. Similarly handsome, similarly very intelligent, very pale old white guy kind of vibes, uh, who was, pontificating, and pontiff is the root of the word of pontificate, by the way. So there's no coincidence there. The the but did I? No, was it? What can I say? Did a tech bro come in here 3 months ago as the ever and the timing frame, just to be precise, was when Evergrande was starting to happen and unfold in China? Yes, and there was the hints of COVID starting to appear in the not Delta, but the Omega was starting to happen in China prior to the Olympics, if I recall correctly. So the what was the prediction was, and the warning was that in the same way that back channels were secretly provocating and prodding Putin into Ukraine, which, by the way, the Pope today is now kind of echoing, by the way. And he's a rather learned individual about these topics. And he's, by the way, an incredibly outspoken critic about what Russia's doing in Ukraine. And by the way, so was this tech bro. Nonetheless, they both seem to have come to the similar conclusions based on the data that they have access to. And this tech bro warned that watch out because Putin is going to attack, Ukraine is going to defend. All of that's proved true. And a similar thing's going to happen in China. And that person explained in detail how it would unfold, that due to, while COVID is going on in China, while the housing market is collapsing in China, the U.S. will take advantage of that and poke the panda in a nearly identical ways by recognizing the sovereignty of Taiwan. And what have we seen since then? Indeed, America's recognizing, hinting at sovereignty of Taiwan, and that is poking the panda, and now the panda is responding. And that's exactly where we're at. So, and this is Twitter's one of their top 5 what's trending on Twitter. It's the article from Telegraph World News. Xi Jinping signs a directive, fears of Taiwan as China lays groundwork for its own special military operation in Taiwan. And what you're going to find is somebody like the Pope is also going to conclude that similarly, because of this provocation that the U.S. recognize, starting to through kind of subtle smoke signals, is subtle indications of recognizing Taiwan sovereignty, which it is, and we've seen those. We've been reading those headlines the last few weeks. There's no two ways about that, as predicted, but and as warned. Watch out. This is, I said, even this is going back 3 months. Did it, BB, correct me if I'm wrong, that I said all of this would happen, and I said
Yeah.
this is how China's going to respond, and it's very
Well,
serious.
yeah, but because the official, I mean, the release is very limited. It was signed like 3 days ago on June 13th. So it was in one of lawyer not annually but the the meetings between um the CCP party. And a little bit more about this is about the Solomon Island. Actually, they signed a military agreement, or I would say because the Solomon Island, the president or the officials they said they need China to protect their domestic security. So um, that's one of the reasons the analyst says that's why they need a law or legislation in China to support this military action as well. But of course, like Tyler said, I think they have more agendas behind this, but this is one of the reason on the table. They have announced this agreement, but there's no more details even in China's own state-backed media. So we have to keep on keep our eyes on this.
Hey, BB,
Yeah,
thanks for adding the Solomon Islands in there because that's a
yeah,
big
yeah,
one
yeah.
too.
It was
Because that
in,
also triggered
yeah,
Australia to
yes,
mention that they would be willing to help the Solomon Islands with their security because there had been some
yeah.
rioting
Actually, it's
going on
more
there. So there's
logical
yeah,
because
but
Australia has
one
a bit of
last
a
thing,
border.
the Solomon Islands would allow China to break out of that inner ring that currently, let's just say, the Quad
Yeah,
has on
yes,
China. And
yes,
so, how they do with the Solomon Islands and other places would actually help them to become more of
yeah.
a
Or
blue ocean navy. Yeah.
yeah, along this Pacific Ocean. I mean the western, western side of the Pacific Ocean. Yep.
I do have a question though. How much is it just provocation, and how much this decision is based on internal Chinese issues, especially food related? Food shortages are very eminent because the crop season is affected by the reduction of those chemicals that are needed, and there are reduced number of grain imports, wheat and stuff because of the war in Ukraine, and China was going to face a lot of issues in terms of how they are going to feed all these mouths they have. The season of what do you call the sowing is around the corner, and it's very affected because of the war. So whenever a country is faced with these internal issues where they have difficulty in feeding people and their population, there's always some kind of distraction, although it does not mean that's the only reason. But I was just wondering that is a problem they are not able to solve as of yet.
Okay, real quickly.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. No, very good points, but I don't think China, looking at some of the data, really does that much with Ukraine and relating to wheat. I know everybody's talking about that, but South America is very happy, or they could benefit from this very much, Argentina and Brazil, from the wheat production.
Not only wheat, they do have the dependency on potash, or the, what do you call that thing that helps plants grow more? Um,
Fertilizer.
fertilizer,
Fertilizer. Yeah.
fertilizer issues.
Okay, just quickly. Jeff G just found one that I'm retweeting from the Taipei Times. It says Taiwan quietly attended the U.S. Japan Security Forum. Geez, I wonder why. And I wonder why China would be provoked by that. A Taiwanese military delegation yesterday attended the opening of the Pacific Amphibious Leaders Symposium. Quietly attended. But this is part of China attending this, right? No, obviously not. And by the way, Japan is the second biggest navy in the world, and so China, understandably, this is even by Taiwan attending this. This is the art of provocation, done in a very way that's meant to not be determined by a jury to be provocative at all. And of course, technically it shouldn't. And in all transparent, in all fairness, China is the one who put themselves in a position to be so easily provoked. So did Russia by claiming that they own Taiwan. Well, now that's a real defensive liability, because now anyone can provoke you by simply hinting that they think Taiwan is not part of that, and now that's a very strategic liability.
Well, didn't Nicaragua just do a counterpunch to China just did a counterpunch with Nicaragua because this will be a first. They approved allowing Chinese troops to do maneuvers or something like that in Nicaragua. So that's a counter punch to the Monroe Doctrine too, and we'll also see what happens with Venezuela too.
Okay.
So there's a big grand game going on.
Okay. Next up, Jeff G just found this one from Taipei Times. Textbook in Hong Kong. New school books in Hong Kong will teach Hong Kong students that the territory of that the territory of Hong Kong was never a British colony. Wow. That deserves a little investigation. Textbooks to say Hong Kong never part of the UK. Interesting. And full self-driving Tesla version .11 likely to be ready for wide release soon. That's great. And a robot dog can now be equipped to swim underwater. Ghost Robotics four-legged version 60 of the robot dog can now be turned into a fully amphibious drone. That's kind of cool. Now the dog swims. The robot dogs can now jump in your pool. And that does it for today. And I'm not entirely sure yet that I'll be able to join tomorrow, because I'm in Stockholm in part to join my friends Daniel Ek and Ash Pranori, who you've seen me bring in the room here multiple times in Tech News. Every time I introduce Ash here in Tech News, I mention that he hosts one of the coolest events on the planet every year, and that happens to be tomorrow for the next 2 days. It's called Brilliant Minds. I just pinned it to the top of the room. I'll be one of the 300 invitees, as I have been every year from the start, where I co-hosted the first year, in fact. And this year should be pretty good. Last year we had Obama and Oprah, a few notable people. This year, some of the speakers I just pinned to the top of the room include, in alphabetical order, Ai Weiwei, who just arrived yesterday, Alexis Ohanian, who's the former CEO of Reddit, co-founder of Reddit. Alicia Keys is going to perform. Who else that you would know? A lot of important Europeans that you probably might not know. Let me see. Just scrolling through the speakers list. Bjork Engels, who's the biggest architect in the world at the moment. Bjorn Franson, one of the top chefs in the world at the moment. Anyway, really interesting list. Deepak Chopra is going to talk. Okay. Edward Norton.
Hi.
Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk is
That's
back.
MBS, right, Tyler?
No. Gary's going to be there. I've known Gary for decades. Carol King will be back. She came last time as well. I just haven't looked at Howard Marks will be there. That's good. Who else is here this year? Anyways,
Is it live stream, Tyler,
no,
at all? Or
it's not.
okay.
I'll be, if you follow me on Twitter, Malala, the activist, is going to speak. I'll be sharing photos from my Twitter account if you follow me on Twitter. And then my friend Peter Carlson, who left Tesla to start Northvolt, who I stay at his house when I'm here in Stockholm. So the reason that I don't know is because I don't know what the schedule is for tomorrow, but I probably will be able to maybe listen, but not moderate fully as I normally do tomorrow, and that's true for tomorrow and the day after that. So,
Hey, Tyler, what is the
yeah,
genesis of that program?
that
Like,
event, yeah,
yeah, that event. Yeah, thanks.
yeah. So, because me and Ash and Daniel have known each other since before Brilliant Minds, and when the point with Brilliant Minds was the first few years to make help raise the profile of Stockholm as a creative capital of the world. That was in big part Daniel and Ash's vision for it. And the problem with the event is because it's limited to 300 people, and it's invite only, and it's free to attend if you're one of the invitees. But and they spend an incredible amount of money in the production of the event. Truly unbelievable budget that they have to spend. And God bless the Wallenberg family, who's one of the richest families in the world here in Sweden, who pick up the tab for that. And the the parties are legendary. In fact, for this event, it's truly unbelievable. Um, but the point of it is really to make the creative version of Davos for creatives and artists and uh, culture cultural influencers, so to speak. That was sort of the vision.
Perfect.
Because you have the business leaders meeting in Davos, and they shape the world, to their liking in particular ways, and they meet, and conversate around that. But the more than business, there's people other than business leaders who help shape the world that we're in, and a lot of those are cultural movers and shakers and thinkers and artists. And Ai Weiwei fits that perfectly. Actually, he does, influence how politicians respond and everything else. So that's sort of the underlying premise, I would say.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.